Just as a bit of introduction, for Joerg is the Wendland-Cook Professor of Constructive Theology at the Perkins School of Theology at SMU. So please welcome Joerg Rieger.
Good afternoon. I'll be talking about this topic today, No Rising Tide, Theology, Economics in the Future, and this is actually the book which has this goldfish in a goldfish bowl. The publisher does these things. This is not my doing, but I thought they captured it pretty well, because if goldfish can look worried, this one actually does. And there's not much room for a rising tide in that goldfish bowl. So, Fortress Press, which is really in many ways the publisher of my choice, usually gets me, and I appreciate that. There are always other books too. There's another new book I co-authored with two Latin American theologians, Beyond the Spirit of Empire, that came out from SCM Press in London, and a new book on globalization coming out this fall, also globalization and theology. But this one here, No Rising Tide, why would I talk about No Rising Tide? Because this is an off title, right? The economy goes in cycles, as everybody knows. So, the tide rises and it falls and it comes back and it falls and it recedes and it rises. And so why no rising tide? If you look at the economic crisis in which we found ourselves not long ago, you could probably say, well, it was a real bad dip, the worst one ever since the Great Recession. At the same time, the Dow is coming back, our 401k plans are benefiting again, and things are looking up, except for a couple of troubles here and there. But the economy is rising again. So why no rising tide? Well, the truth is, there is not going to be a rising tide for most of us. For more and more of us, even people that thought of themselves as solidly middle class, this tide is not going to rise. It's not coming back in the way that we were told it always would come back. Even the Dallas Morning News reported recently that about 50% of jobs lost in this recession are not coming back. Can you imagine? 50% of jobs lost this time around are not coming back. And so this recovery, the one that we're looking at now, is a different one from the recoveries we had in the past, because the tide is not rising for more and more of us. And wherever I go, I know that not everybody has lost their jobs. I know that not everybody is necessarily struggling. But I have a feeling that we all know people who have lost their jobs. Some of our friends, children, parents, relatives. There's somebody we know who is struggling, and maybe it is us. So this is the point about no rising tide. But why talk about this in church? Why would you want to talk about economics in the church? Don't we have better stuff to talk about, right? Like Jesus Christ and the angels and the Holy Spirit and all that stuff, Why talk economics? A lot of people will go to church tomorrow, and you can be sure they will not hear about economics. They'll hear about Jesus Christ and the angels and all these beautiful things. But what's economics got to do? When I wrote an Empire, and Kim mentioned this previous book, Christ and Empire, my argument about empire was that empire is not just about politics and economics. Empire is really about shaping our lives as a whole. Empire is not just interested in getting your political compliance and your economic attention. It wants to shape you as deeply as possible. And so empire shapes the way you think. It wants to shape the way you feel. And it wants to shape what you believe. And if it doesn't do so explicitly, it does so very deviously under the surface. This is happening all the time. And so perhaps, No Rising Tide is really volume 2 of Christ and Empire. Actually, I can send this around, take a look at it. Because it's talking about how the economy does these same things. The economy is not just interested in getting your money or arranging your funds. The economy is really interested, economics is really interested in making you think a certain way, in making you relate to people in a certain way, in shaping your innermost emotional makeup. It shapes ultimately also the sorts of beliefs. And that's of course the scary thing for churches, right? How does the economy shape what we believe? How does the economy ultimately shape religion? One of the questions I'm raising in this book is the question, first, when we Christians talk about the economy, we usually think of, well, how can we help? What can we do? What difference can we make? The first question that needs to be raised, though, is not what can we do to the economy, but what does the economy do to us? Or more specifically, what does the economy do to God? What does money do to God? That's the question that we usually don't ask ourselves. How does economic thinking, how does money ultimately shape our images of God? Now, you can give lots of examples for that, and the most blatant ones you're aware of. There's this so-called gospel of prosperity. You've heard of it, right? Gospel of success. Or basically, you know, you have good pastors, mega-church pastors oftentimes, people on TV, promising you all kinds of things, good luck, wealth, that sort of thing, if you follow certain precepts, if you donate money to the church, if you are a good Christian, if you only have strong faith, all this thing will come to you, and you'll end up rich and wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. That's not just a gimmick. That is ultimately faith in God. You know, this is how people imagine God as perhaps the heavenly lottery. Talking about the lottery, Joel brought me a lottery ticket. I guess he knew what I was talking about. The first lottery ticket that I owned, so we'll see. I may just be lucky. But that's, of course, what we're talking about, right? That's the gospel of prosperity. And you know what? A few people always get lucky. And those people, you then show up on camera, you know, you parade them on TV, up on your stage, you know, the pastor will let me talk to you about this what God has done for you, and some people actually get wealthy. The truth, of course, is that it doesn't work for most people. It doesn't. It's not a program to actually lift people out of poverty or to end the economic trouble in which we are. So hopefully it will end this for me next Monday. That God actually may not come through for you. I wouldn't bank on it, but I'll still put it in my pocket, so just to be safe, I will not waste it now. What does money do to God? It shapes our images of God, and then you have God as the heavenly, you know, banker, Santa Claus, somebody who doles out success, money, wealth, and riches. This is a question I got asked a few years ago by a reporter in Time magazine who wrote a big piece on the gospel of prosperity. So he calls up my office and he says, so what do you have to say about the gospel of prosperity and the fact that nice, good mainline Christians are actually falling for it? You know, good Methodists, good Presbyterians, good Episcopalians, even Catholics, right? Fall for it. None of us here, of course, but why do good Christians fall for that sort of thing? United Church of Christ, right? Why does it happen? And you know, I hadn't thought about it much then, a couple of years ago, but it struck me as that maybe we're not so different. And he said, well, what do you mean? How are we not different than the creatures of the gospel of prosperity? And, you know, it occurred to me, of course, we're not as blatant. We're not promising people you'll be rich and successful in your wildest dreams by simply following, you know, your religion. But we too have this idea that God, mainline people, that God is at the top, and people who are at the top will have more power, more wealth, more success, are somehow closer to God. I mean, look at who serves on the important boards of our